Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Rudman, and welcome to our 23rd film in the series, Let's Go to the Movies at Home. We need to have a virtual party when we get to number 25, don't you think? Debbie and Bob and I just agreed we're gonna do that. Anyway, this time it's Best Foot Forward, starring the pre-I Love Lucy Lucille Ball, with an amazing and hilarious featured performance by Nancy Walker, who was then just 19 years old, and a Sacco score by two 20-somethings who had never written a song before in their lives, my friend Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine. As you know, I'm just filling time here while our new moviegoers read this slide, so they will know how to participate, not just by using the chat, but by making sure we can see you on screen here in the land of Zoom. And if you are a first timer, please, please, please send Debbie Schinker a private message so that we can add you to our mailing list. I wish I could give him a bigger entrance, but let's say a virtual hello to my co-host, Bob Knoll.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here. Hello, everybody.
Camera. I think this is fun tonight for many reasons. One of them is I love it when we can screen a film that even you have not seen before.
Yes, all I did, Bill, I heard of Best Foot Forward because Liza Minnelli did it. I think she made her debut on Broadway years ago in a simple cast album, and it was off Broadway, I believe. That's the only thing I know about the show until you recommended us that we see it. And I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
1943, a story
right.
about cadets, which ties in beautifully with World War II going on, you know, and what were the country like.
So how about we tie in the fact that you're a first timer with this movie into our traditional survey?
Sure, let's do that. Debbie, why don't you give us the survey and we can talk about it?
All right, here it goes.
Okay, here it goes. Okay, was this your first time viewing this film? Okay, please, everybody, we're polling you.
Submit.
Or your fits this time. Apparently I made a typo. We'll fix that next time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
First time viewing this film.
Yeah, good.
All right, everybody voted. That was quick.
They've really gotten the hang of it.
Yes.
There you go.
Here we are.
Good. And
got
Bob
80.
now?
80%.
Okay, now we have another question, correct? For the survey, next question, polling. Okay, did you like the film? Yes, no, or you were neutral?
Submit.
Okay.
Okay, so almost half liked it, and then the other half were either neutral or didn't like it, didn't like the film. Okay.
Well, you know, I always look on the positive side. So in my mind, I'm going to put the neutrals into the yeses. Figure we only have 26% no's. No, you know, we want to hear whatever anybody has to say. Incidentally, in the background, in my background on the sofa, you can see one of my two cats, in case any of you is a cat person. That is Samantha, all stretched out back there. I think that it would be a mistake to sort of over intellectualize this movie. And, you know, sometimes we do that in this series because the people who come, the members we have so many brainiacs in this group, but I don't think we have to be brainiacs tonight. This is just a joyride, pure and simple. Jan Roberts, who's one of our loyal folks, sent me an email this morning. She was really sorry she couldn't be here tonight, but she had seen the movie and seen the introduction, and she just put this so well. She said, "I love this movie. A lot of fun with a swell cast and wonderful songs." So that's a good way to kind of kick this off. I do want to start with a question that hopefully will make you reflect just a bit. Herb Drower, I always point out, is the senior member of this group, and he doesn't seem to mind it when I say that. He's smiling. But here's the thing. Even Herb Drower was not a teenager in 1943. He was a little young for that. So I want to ask this whole group, as Bob said. Okay. We got one. Okay. Well, then you should answer first. My question is this. Bob and I would like to know, how many of you think you would have liked to be a teenager in 1943 at Winsocki Academy, whether you were a girl or a boy teenager, either way?
Anybody? Okay,
Yeah.
Bruce has got his hand up, Bill. Go on.
Okay.
Bruce, you're muted. Okay.
I don't think so. Judy agrees. It was a terrible time with World War II going on, and it just didn't seem like for me and Judy, a time personally to be a teenager, because it seemed, I mean, you're stuck in military school with no girls. And the girls weren't even treated nicely.
Well, hey, Bill.
Bob,
Jim
you
Froh-
want to talk?
Gwen, we already have some. What were you saying? Someone was talking.
This is Jim Frolking right here,
Right, yeah.
97.
Okay.
Yeah, our friend Jim, who is how old, Lynn?
He's gonna be 97, April 30th.
Okay, so you were a teenager, Jim. How did you, was that a good time to be a teenager in one way or another?
Well, not for these kids, because they wouldn't have gone on to West Point. They would have gone right into the military.
They
They might have at Point, but probably most of them would have gone right into the regular army, because they were
Yeah.
just recruiting everybody at that time.
Yeah. Yes,
You had to
right.
enlist or drafted. And I think if you were at West Point, you would have stayed in, but I'm not sure these kids would have gotten in.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 3 negative votes so far. Any of you think that there might have been anything positive about being a teenager in 1943?
Steve wants to respond, Bill. Steve?
No, if I could have been at Winsocki and Nancy Walker was there, I would have been happy to be a teenager in 1940.
You and me both, Steve. I agree. How about some of the rest of you on that question?
That's a good
Any
question.
other
Anybody?
yes?
Anybody?
Well, I'll put my opinion out there and see if anybody agrees with it or not. I sure get how scary it was. At the same time, it seems to me that during that period and also the depression that preceded it, there was a tremendous feeling of unity in America. And I think actually you can even feel that in this film, that sort of unity. And I guess for me, I don't want to romanticize a time that was that was already very dangerous. But I do think there was a unity then that we don't find the same way now at all, really.
Absolutely right.
Steve, go on. Steve, you were going to say something?
No, I think that was from before. I think I
Okay.
raised my hand
Herb
twice.
was going to say, Herb, you say something, but you're muted.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, by 1943, the war had changed. while we had a disastrous 1942, by 1943, we had made enough gains, militarily, that it was far more positive. And I can recall, I
Yes.
was much younger, of course, we were much more optimistic about the war. We didn't look like we were going to lose, and we weren't, because it was obvious in 1943, the tide had turned. It was clear that Japan could not win that war. And
Good point.
so I think it was
I
more, I was more optimistic, and I can remember that point. Of course, we always used to play our games, and the Japs were always the bad guy. If I might use that term, which I wouldn't dare
Yeah.
use now, but I did in 1943.
Yeah.
Okay, the Bartels have a hand up, go on.
This is Jim Frolking.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that comment. I don't think the tide had turned that dramatically in 1943, maybe late 43 and early 44, right?
No, by
before-
43, well, it depends who you read. We won a big naval battle. I think it was 43, but I'll defer to your knowledge. But it wasn't that far away from when it was clear the Japanese had run out of steam sometime in 43. And it was clear to many people. And it was made known to me. We had members of our family who were serving, and I can remember there being optimistic. They were talking about what was going to happen after the war. Nobody I knew at the time thought, by God, we're going to lose this as a disaster. It wasn't. And if you read any history of the condition of the Japanese government, it was clear they knew it too. It was no secret to anybody.
Okay, good. I love the way this film ends, though, with that shot of the American flag blowing in the wind. I think that's very, very powerful.
Like a Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney movie ending with a flag.
Yeah. Steve, it looked like you had maybe another observation. No? Okay.
No, I just, I love Nancy Walker.
Yeah.
My only
Yes,
observation.
and another Nancy Walker fanatic is here tonight. Arthur is here, so I'm sure we're going to have some lively talk about Nancy, who I just had to tell you was a friend of mine. I was really lucky to know her. Are the Valances here yet?
Here we
and
are.
we're unmuted. How about that?
Here we are.
How about that?
Wow.
You got let in on time. Isn't that a terrific?
How about that?
Thank you.
Jack and I, now we have a tradition, which is that Jack, who loves to do nothing more than research, really wanted to find out more about Harry James. And in many of the promotional posters for this movie, Harry James basically gets co-starring credit. So yeah, Jack, we want you to hold forth for a minute on Harry James. An interesting figure, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, but when I think of the big band rock stars, which is really what they were, I think of first of Glenn Miller, and then the Dorsey brothers and Benny Goodman, and then I kind of get to Harry James, and I tend to give him short shrift. So tell me why I should not do that.
Okay, well, Harry James was born into the circus. His mother was an acrobat and a horseback rider. His father was a band leader. Started Harry on the trumpet when he was 8 years old. So Harry was born in 1916. So when he was 8 years old, started on the trumpet. Pretty soon he's playing in the band. Okay, Harry James joined the father of swing, Ben Pollock, then did 2 years with Benny Goodman's band, who's the king of swing. And with Goodman's financial support, started his own band in 1939, hired a young singer named Frank Sinatra. Sinatra lasted 7 months, went over to Dorsey. When he added a string section in 1941, Harry James and his music makers took off. The Sweeter Sound was a huge success, bringing chart-topping hits as well as a regular appearance on radio and in the movies. I mean, we saw Harry James at the height of his popularity in 1944. That's why he was getting star billing. Now, his flamboyant style used techniques popular in the 1920s hot jazz. Remember, I mean, he was a circus trumpeter, but by the 1940s, tastes had changed. And so he was considered schmaltzy by, some jazz critics. Now, since then, more recent critics have been kinder to him. So Harry
Yeah.
James was really huge at the time, and he actually toured with his band to the end till he died in 1983. And the Harry James Orchestra had tour dates booked into 2020.
My
Oh, it's a
lord.
ghost band.
And,
Wow.
and Jack, this is something that maybe not even you know, and I was just staggered by it. Because, you know, we just did Girl Crazy, and that was Tommy Dorsey.
Right.
So we've sort of cemented the fact that these guys did movies. And I didn't realize until today that that Harry James made 17 films.
Exactly,
Ooh.
That's
right.
17. Lordy. A phenomenon. So I want to know who remembers big bands, real big bands playing at high school dances or proms. Oh, Herb Drower does.
But
Oh, right.
not playing at our high school.
Swing and sway.
We couldn't afford a kazoo player.
Okay.
But I
That's-
remember
that's-
big bands were very popular.
Oh yeah,
And,
it was the big.
and if
now
we got a
think of
chance to see them, we would.
Michael had
yeah,
something
we
to say,
have
Bill.
the big band
Michael?
era.
Michael had something to say, Bill, about that. Your hand up. Yes. Michael, you were going to say something? You're unmute yourself. Unmute.
Yeah.
Unmute. Wait, unmute. Okay, you're still muted.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, well, I went to Heights High School, and one of the girls' sororities there at co-sorority with one at Shaker, they hired Glenn Miller
Oh,
for one of the dances
Oh my lord.
in 1943 or 42. I mean, 41 or 42. That was pretty amazing.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
wow.
up at Carnegie and Euclid Avenue.
Michael, you were going to.
Yeah, we had Stan Rubin and his Tiger Town 5.
But does that mean that there were only 5 musicians? It was a big band.
It was bigger than that. He started out at 5.
Mr. Mayor
Okay.
has something to say.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I love that big band sound, frankly, even today. Count Basie and his orchestra played the homecoming dance at Ohio State when I was there in the early 60s.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
yeah.
I have a long tradition of big band enjoyment, even though I came after the real big band era.
Right.
At
Blanche,
Miami University homecoming, 1967, we swing and sway with Sammy Kaye.
Okay.
And Sammy Kaye was a native of Lakewood, and Sammy Kaye also had a ghost band. But in 1967, that's when it was his band was playing
1967.
at Miami.
Goodness.
I
mean,
remember
yeah,
big bands not famous. Oh, sorry.
Go on,
Oh, I was
Bonnie.
just gonna. You can go. I just want to interject. 1967, Jack. That was like Janis Joplin time. So
Well, exactly. Blanche and I were just
But not, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we were just reflecting on the huge transition that was
Yes, yes.
occurring. I mean, she arrived on campus in 65. I arrived in 66. And there was just this very big transition going on at that time.
Yeah.
I remember big bands in high school and college for dances, not famous ones for the most part. I miss Sammy Kaye because I was in Israel that year. But I remember big bands. I remember, wanting them to play Misty and it might as well be spring and, real American songbook stuff at our dances. But I graduated from college in 69. So this is the period from 61 to 69 that I was in high school and college.
So those of you who remember going to dances, high school or college, where there was a truly big band, what was that experience like? What did it feel like to be in probably a gym or something, or and have a big band. What did it feel like?
You didn't do a lot of dancing. You stood up by the bandstand to watch the Glenn Miller band, but pretty famous. And I remember seeing him at the old Palace Theater.
And if they weren't famous, it felt very grown up to be having them.
I bet it did.
That's interesting that they stood around though, because that's what they showed in both movies with the bands, that the kids were just standing around the orchestra watching. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The business about people watching the big bands on the PBS program on jazz the other day, they actually mentioned, I think it was the Benny Goodman band. At some point, people stopped dancing and just listened. So that became a phenomenon that carries through to this day.
Yeah. Well, as you guys all know, one reason that you listened so closely, it wasn't just the musicianship, it was those arrangements for those bands were incredibly sophisticated. A guy like Eddie Sauter, who was a jazz guy par excellence. I mean, they were writing amazing charts, So there was a lot to see and hear. Deborah Matthews is here tonight, though. She's recovering from a terrible migraine. So she warned me that she was going to be passive. But she had a very interesting question in an email to me. And I asked her to Google it to see if she could find the answer. And she thought that Google, this entry was probably written by people who were too young to know what the truth was. But the question was this, in the movie, there's that scene at the prom where they exchange rings in the couples.
Yeah.
And Deborah was wondering, did that actually happen, or was that just really an invention for the film?
At military schools, they do that. At Naval Academy, they have the ring dance. And I believe they have the same thing at West Point. And I'm pretty sure that the military, Culver Academy in Indiana, I think they had something like that.
So it could have been a military tradition.
Right. Sounds like it.
Yeah, the Naval Academy called it the ring dance.
I've never heard of
actually that term, ring dance. Really?
Yeah, I've never heard of an exchange of rings. The man may give the ring to the woman, but I'd never heard of an exchange of rings before this movie.
Yeah, it worked both ways in this movie. Well, Deborah, you kind of got an answer anyway. Rings were a big deal in military academies. That's something that I didn't know at all. I have a question. Yeah.
I wanted to let you know that Linda Beck has been waiting patiently with her hand up, and this is, last time was her first, and now she's back. So we're glad to have you, Linda.
Oh, indeed. And we want to hear from her.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. I was struck by them playing The Flight of the Bumblebee at a dance. There's nobody who could dance to that. And I wondered if that sort of thing would really have happened. I know this was a special band, but still.
Well, I don't know whether that was a Harry James specialty. It sure showed off that name.
That was a Harry James specialty.
And then it gave the girls something to play off when they said, no, we don't want to hear that classical stuff. Give us the 3 Bs. So I think it provided a dramatic purpose as well. But it's interesting.
Yeah, Mario wants to say something. Mario, go on.
Should I mute us again?
You're muted.
Right.
You wanted to say something? Oh, he's muted. Okay.
Okay. So now I call on Debbie Schinker, and she knows I'm going to do this. And I told her I didn't want to know her answer. But I think, and I mean this as a compliment to you, Debbie, you are one of the most politically correct people I know. And I wanted to know what you thought, and then the rest of the group thought about the scene in which all those teenagers basically were ripping Lucille Ball's clothes off.
I thought it was a stunt to get Lucille Ball in a slip for comic effect. And that's why they have men and women doing it. I don't think it was meant to be anything else but a stunt for viewers to laugh at Lucy about. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Oh, see, I guess Blanche gave me a thumbs up, so Blanche agrees.
Okay, so you were not offended by it. Was anybody offended by that scene?
No.
No.
Good.
I do want to know what Daniel thinks, though. Daniel always has good
Oh,
insights.
he does.
Yeah. Well, I did not take offense at that. I thought there was a lot of farcical action in the film. A lot of, even to the extent of the classical like French farce with the doors slamming and people coming in and out and hiding in and out. It just struck me as a classical farce in that regard. So no, I didn't take offense. I didn't take it, too seriously, I don't think, in that regard. I will say regarding the big band, first of all, Nancy Walker was just extraordinary in the film. My background with her and our band leader was one of my favorite moments in the scene, their interaction there.
Mhm.
And although I didn't grow up in the era of big band, the first night of Chrissy and our honeymoon, we saw Tony Bennett with the trio that he played with in the mid 90s. And boy, if there was something to be said for that era, that music and hearing someone like Tony Bennett just would have been everything. I was reading about Tony Bennett, incidentally, who Bill knows I'm just a huge, huge fan of, and that AARP article about his disclosure of Alzheimer's had me reading up on him a little bit. And in 1970, he recorded an album called Tony Sings the Great Hits of Today, which was like, they try to do like psychedelic and Beatles stuff. And it sort of like seemed to me to maybe perhaps mark a really definitive end to the big band era in some ways, because his son described it as almost like overnight he went from being relevant to irrelevant when the British invasion happened. And they said that after they played that album that Tony recorded for himself, he literally threw up and never listened to it again. So happily he got back to his roots thereafter. But anyway, that was just a moment that stuck out.
And it was his son who got him back to his roots. And I think it was MTV, the Unplugged stuff that Tony Bennett did really brought him back and developed a whole new young audience.
That's when I actually got hooked. It was the Unplugged tour that was happening during our honeymoon. So anyway, I tie that all back to the joy I have in hearing those bands. And that Flight of the Bumblebee song was just extraordinary.
It is.
Extraordinary. So I
That
love
was my favorite part. My favorite part of the whole movie, right there.
Arthur, you have something to say, Arthur?
Yes. The stripping off of the clothes, that's the souvenirs, both boys and girls, is anticipated several times earlier in the movie by everyone saying, the last time I remember you were in a bathing suit. And Lucille Ball says, I'm always in a bathing suit. So she's put back into a bathing suit equivalent. So it's, it's structurally anticipated in the movie and a sound anticipation.
Yep, I agree.
And if, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to say something about, rather than being in the movie, what the movie gave to us at the time in 1943, which was a sense of young people, the future, joy, the ring exchange, where they give rings to each other and put them on, is a sign of a commitment to the future. And I'm reminded of the end of Sullivan's Travels. Okay, we can laugh, right? We can have joy, and we can look to young people making commitments and being there for our future, even in 1943.
Yeah, well stated.
Barbara's got something, Bill.
I was just going back to the music. I was just going to say that one of the very favorite parts to me was 2 O'Clock Jump, when the band played that at the beginning. The real swing.
That's a Count Basie tune, by the way. It's 1 o'clock, actually. It's 1 o'clock jump.
Well, that one's he calls his 2 O'Clock Jump. I looked it up after I saw it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's based on, it's an arrangement or a variation, has the same swing part to 1 O'Clock Jump, but he promotes it or recorded it in 1939 first as 2 O'Clock Jump.
Okay.
Took some
good. Thank you. You guys are good.
Michael had something to say. Michael?
He did it for me. May I say a word about Lucille Ball? I don't want to introduce her if you don't. If you
Go
want.
for it. Yeah, go for it.
I know she played it straight, but I thought it was interesting that there wasn't even a hint of the comedic talent, her brilliance of the Lucy years. If I didn't know it, it wouldn't occur to me that she had the kind of potential to do the broad comedy that she did. I mean, the off the wall stuff. So I thought that was interesting. She was pretty innocuous in but mainly because I was saying, is this the Lucy that I love so much, with the programs? Anyway.
I think that could be because the part was written for Lana Turner, who was going to play it originally, more sexy and was a bigger star at the time. But she got pregnant, and so Lucy came in to do the role.
Laurel Kest has her hand up. Go ahead, Laurel.
Yeah, I felt that it was almost as if she was just walking through the part. I didn't get the feeling that she was trying to be what the audience might expect. Even though at that time she was younger, she didn't have the reputation, but too many of the characters or the actors bothered me by either being so over the top that it was sort of, to me, ridiculous. Her agent, the young kids who were, this was their chance to get on the big screen. And a lot of them just seemed to be trying to outdo each other without staying in a character. The only one that I really felt made the movie was Nancy Walker. But when it came to Lucille Ball, I was disappointed because and it wasn't that she wasn't comedic. She just never came alive.
Well, I want equal time here and we're going to respectfully agree to disagree on this one. What I said in the intro was, I think it was very gutsy for Lucille Ball to play this role because she is really satirizing herself. She's playing Lucille Ball, who at that time, Lucille Ball's career was not doing so hot. She was making movies, but she wasn't making truly notable movies. So here comes Lucille Ball in this movie, wanting to do something that will get her back on the map. And the word I used in the intro was, I think we see Lucille Ball mostly just kind of being annoyed. And you're quite right. She's not funny in this movie. But I think that took guts. I think she really played a character. She played herself,
Bill, I think part of it is the fact that Lucy became a gigantic star when she had people write for her. And most of her career, when she really excelled, was when she started to write. And it was really with television, gave her a persona. Yep. She was a very serious lady, when she wasn't on camera.
Yes.
But she had the right writers. She had the right writers.
And she was also serious when given the opportunity. I think one of her best movies was, I think the name is The Big Street with Henry Fonda. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but she plays a thoroughly despicable woman who's a gangster's mall, and she has to go in a wheelchair, and then she dies in Henry Fonda's arms on the dance floor. Barbara has seen it. And it's who was the author of the Guys and Dolls stories?
Damon Runyon.
Damon Runyon. It's the Damon Runyon story adapted to the film. She was an extraordinary actress when given the opportunity. And she was an extraordinary actress in her way and undersung in the range, just as Nancy Walker was. When Nancy Walker was pegged into a persona she had here and in Girl Crazy. But even when she could break out of it, as she did in Do Re Mi, as Bill knows, I saw that, she was very serious. It's a musical which stars two middle-aged people who have a failing marriage, and there's desperation. And she played opposite Phil Silvers. Neither one of them told jokes, and they were terrific on stage together.
Great show. I think that's a great show. Yeah, thank you. And you know, the point that was made about the performances in general in this movie, I think, Bob, you'll agree with me. This movie is not all that well directed. It's not directed by somebody who was on MGM's A-list.
Well, the director was Edward Bazell. He's famous for two of the Marx Brothers movies, At the Circus and Go West. But his style of directing makes sense when he realized he was the director of the Milton Berle show in the late 1940s, the over-the-top humor, undisciplined humor that show had. So maybe that represents the kind of guy he, as a director, you know, he wasn't disciplined.
Could be.
Bill, we have a new person with us tonight, Steve, and he's got his hand up.
Hey, Steve.
I had a question about, you know, the talk of characters and they're boring or kind of made of cardboard, and just remembering this is based on a stage musical, which I know very little about how much they adapted. I'm familiar with the '63 cast recording with Liza Minnelli, and I've listened to that, and you can sort of piece together through that much of the story is still there. But I'm wondering, you know, did they pretty much just take it? The character that Lucy played is pretty much the one on the stage, and that's why she's not very funny, because the lines weren't there originally. I just asked the question.
Yeah, it's pretty loyal to the original stage version, which I think is cool. And again, I think for Lucille Ball to be on screen sort of admitting that her career is going nowhere is a very interesting idea for us to see. And she plays it very well, I think. We're going to get to Nancy Walker, or there will be nasty emails. But before we get to Nancy Walker, let's just take a minute. Do you guys agree with me that the 3 Bs is just one of the most knockout musical numbers you've ever seen in a film musical? Talk about that. Talk about the 3 Bs and why it works so well.
The girls, the 3 girls that they did in the white dresses, and it was the 3B music that they loved.
Yeah, the boogie woogie the blues, and I'm forgetting the third one.
Barrel
Barrel House Blues, boogie woogie, yeah, and I'm forgetting the third. There's another one in there somewhere. But that is so complex. That piece is so complex, and it goes on for about 6 minutes. And those 3 girls, you know, June Allison and Nancy Walker, had been in the Broadway show and were brought into the movie. Gloria DeHaven was an up-and-coming talent at MGM, and I love Gloria DeHaven. I think, and she's gorgeous for one thing, but I think the 3 of them they make it such an ensemble. And then to have Harry James in the background, to have all those kids, Hugh Martin's vocal arrangement, and you know, we don't often single out vocal arrangements, we just take them for granted, but Hugh Martin wrote an extremely sophisticated chart harmonically for what that chorus is doing when all this other stuff is going on. I think it's just dazzling.
I think what makes it so powerful, at least to me, is the formal structure of it, where you have the 3 of them together, and then they each have, it's like the big bands, right? Yeah. Where you give the trumpet his opportunity to show off, and then you give the drums, they come together, they start together, then they each have their moment in the sun, then they come back together. It is that intricacy, and it is that a fairness to each of them. It's like jazz, where they each have their solo or their lick. It's like big bands, where each has their moment in the sun. That's what I think makes it so great.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
John's got a comment. John?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I certainly couldn't say it any better than that. I agree with that. I do want to add that this may not be fair, but it's how it bumped on me, is having what were supposed to be 17-year-old wealthy white girls singing the blues. That part seemed a little, I mean, not technically wonderful, and it was the time, it was the entertainment of the time for sure, but now that's sort of I stumbled on that.
John, I was going to actually make the point, and I just felt we had to keep it moving along, but I totally agree with you. And the one that really sticks out for me, as much as I loved Gloria DeHaven, for Gloria DeHaven, who is as much a white girl as you can possibly be, to be singing Hugh Martin's interlude about the blues, I think is just kind of ridiculous. And I still love the number, but of the three of them, it's the one that doesn't work for me, because she just has no business doing it. She doesn't know how to do it. If you're going to move into cultural appropriation, then you better at least know how to appropriate. And she doesn't in that piece of it. But the rest of it is sensational, I think. So let's go back to Nancy Walker. And I know Arthur's going to have some stuff to say, and there's several of you who are Nancy Walker fanatics. I have a question about her that I think will spur some discussion. I think everybody in this group remembers her from the 3 sitcoms in the 1970s. There was Macmillan and Wife, there was Rhoda, and there was the Nancy Walker Show. I think I'm right about that, Arthur, those 3. And we all remember her from those. And yet, and she was tremendously popular, quote unquote. That was the height of her popularity in the 70s. At MGM, she had a 3-picture deal. So she did Girl Crazy, which we saw. She did Best Foot Forward. And if you've never seen it, stream Broadway Rhythm 1944, in which she has just one song to do, but she introduced what became a very big hit in the swing era. She introduced a song called Milkman, Keep Those Bottles Quiet. And it's really cool because she's singing it as somebody who was working in the factory on the night shift during World War II. And she's saying, keep those bottles quiet. I'm trying to get some sleep here, So she's positioned as someone who was very important to the war effort, just even in that little song. But I want to go back to my question. Why do you think, actually, Arthur, let's see how some other people respond first, and then you can chime in. Why do you think that Hollywood couldn't really find a place for her? She was a very important theater star, and she became a very important television performer. What is the disconnect? Why did movies not work for her, but the stage and TV did work for her?
Anybody?
And Arthur and Bob Knoll can fight over this one because they're both going to have strong opinions. But
I feel like we need Jeopardy music while people consider. Oh, Ansel's got their hand. Raise your hand if you have an opinion.
Bruce has something to say. Bill, Bruce, you had your hand up. Bruce, you're
okay. She's not. Nancy Walker's not a glamour girl. She performs well, but she wasn't the girl to put out there in front of all the rest of the dancers. Although she did a lovely dance with Harry James. And I couldn't stand watching them throw that trumpet around.
Okay. The Bartels, you have a comment? You had your hand up. No? Okay.
Okay, do you have your hand up?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
Up?
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just scratching my chin.
Oh, okay.
Bob, since you actually worked in television, what's your opinion about the question I asked?
The key is that in those sitcoms, she was great because it was a live audience and she was able to perform like she's on the stage. And that's really the same thing with Lucille Ball. I mean, the reason Desi Arnaz even got the idea to make sure we do this in front of a live audience was because he knew she's a better performer with an audience. And I think that has a lot to do with it. So her timing, how she fed with the audience laughter, and she was able to deal with that. I just think that makes her special than performing in front of a camera with a crew all over the place, and you're really isolated. I think there's something about that. I think that's the same with Ethel Merman too, by the way. You know how she is she comes out so much better on now. She comes out better on stage, also because of the fact that there's a live audience and she performs to it. That's my opinion. There's some actors that just don't perform as well on stage too. It's the same thing.
Yeah, as Blanche pointed out in the chat, Nancy Walker was not classically beautiful. And if you were in Hollywood at the age of 19, you had better be classically beautiful. Did you even notice how unflatteringly costumed Nancy Walker is in this movie when you get to the prom?
Yeah.
That dress looks terrible on her.
And she's the only one in a dress that doesn't match of all of them, because all the dresses matched except that one.
Herbert, you had something to say, Herbert?
Yeah, I was going to say she could put a song across, and when you listen to her on voice recording, she's fantastic. When you watch her in person, to me, it doesn't come across as well. When I hear her, I like her more than when I see her and hear her. I don't know what it is, but she does know how to put a song across.
Yeah. Herb, did you ever see her on stage in New York?
No, never did. Never.
Oh my God, she would have blown you away. She was that good.
Steve's got his hand up,
the best car.
I think Hollywood.
The most beautiful car.
I think Hollywood didn't know what to do with her. She was not. She was too intelligent. She didn't tell jokes. Okay. And she was not, she may have had one persona that they found for her, but she was not like that deadpan woman who was in Harvey Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Virginia O'Brien.
Virginia O'Brien, who had, who had her moment. That's all she could do.
That's all she could do.
and she didn't fit that. She wasn't a glamour girl. And there was an intelligence to her. And she didn't tell jokes. She was middle-aged when she began. What do you do with an intelligent middle-aged pro? And Bill, her interview with you that you played in the introduction, I think she downplayed her professional abilities as a comic. She said, I never tried to be funny. Of course she knew how to be when she wanted. And when she wanted. And I think her true, I mean, it was a joy to see her on stage with Phil Silvers. What other musicals do you have? I mean, A Most Happy Fella gets there halfway, where the central characters are two older comedians who don't tell jokes, who are playing people in a failed marriage trying to get through the day.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, absolutely right.
And they were the leads.
Yeah, and they were the leads. Since you've now all become major Nancy Walker fans, you should know that she made another movie in the 1950s, which I'm sure Arthur knows. Speaking of Phil Silvers, she made a movie with Phil Silvers and Robert Cummings and Eddie Foy Jr. and Doris Day, called Lucky Me. And it's worth seeing, although she is so wasted in that movie, Arthur. She's really wasted in it. But Arthur, tell the group, because this is a hoot, tell the group about the movie that Nancy Walker directed.
That I don't know. You're going to have to help me on that.
Okay, well, it's one of the most dreadful things you would ever see. Nancy Walker was hired to direct a disco movie in the late 1970s called Can't Stop the Music. And it is horrendous. So spare yourself, don't see that, but you can see Lucky Me.
There's two observations yet. Steve has something to say in Blanche.
Great.
Steve?
I was just going to say about Nancy, her unattractiveness was a running gag throughout the movie.
I know, we saw that in Girl Crazy
right
too.
In her last line is the 13-year-old, well, I'll give him 5 years till he's 18 to get used to me.
I know.
And Blanche,
It
you
seems
have something
cruel.
to say?
I saw Nancy Walker and Phil Silvers on stage in Do Re Mi, and it was a powerful show.
As good as it can get. And by the way, you guys, you can find that on YouTube on the Ed Sullivan Show when Do Re Mi was running.
Oh, cool.
Ed Sullivan gave Do Re Mi about 25 minutes, the first 25 minutes of the show. So check that out because you will see the chemistry. It's amazing.
And Nancy Dessau is still with us.
And Nancy Dessau is still with us. Speaking of people who are still with us, I didn't know till today, Tommy Dix, who plays the juvenile, is still alive at 98. How about that?
He's got
and
UV.
people, well, there you go. There's something to aspire to, 98. People asked me this last week how much dubbing was done. And Lucy is dubbed in the beautiful ballad that Hugh Martin wrote for her called You're Lucky? I'm confusing it with the movie title. You're Lucky, I think. Dubbed by Gloria Grafton. And Tommy Dix at the end for the big finale with Buckle Down, Win Saki. That is sure not Tommy Dix. That is Ralph Blaine, Hugh Martin's partner, who had an incredible baritone voice doing that dubbing.
I thought it was a poor dubbing, poor choice for dubbing.
Did too. I did too. It wasn't believable.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Marianne Metz had her hand up. I don't know if she's off video, so.
You may have given up because we're talking so much. Sorry,
Marianne,
Marianne.
had a comment?
Join us, Marianne.
Went back to the time when we talked about seeing Nancy Walker on stage. I think at one time there was on YouTube also a clip of her when she was in On the Town, where she played Hildy, and she sang, My Place.
Carrie, come up to my place. Right.
Yeah.
Yep, it's there. You can find it. It's great. Great stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And she was only 20 then. Dubbing we mentioned.
He's
Stanley
got his hand
Dunn.
up again, Bill. Too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question about Tommy Dix. I'm surprised he was dubbed because he was known for that baritone voice he had, and he didn't.
Yep.
I read online, his recording of Buckle Down, Win Saki was a big hit, before the movie came out. So I'm just so surprised they dubbed him.
I don't know. Maybe it's because the way the movie treated it, it becomes this huge number with all those cadets and stuff. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Lauren has something to say, Bill.
Yeah,
Lauren?
go, sure.
Can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, mine was a question. What was the name of the singer who did the last solo voice, or the last female solo voice? She had a gorgeous voice, good-looking woman. Anybody know who she was?
She stuck out for me too, but I don't know the answer to the question.
Okay.
We should say something about Virginia Weidler, who plays the ingenue in this movie. Virginia Weidler, her work on screen is not very well known to me, but it should be. When I checked into her career, she was a childhood star who did some important movies early on, as Bob knows. But Best Foot Forward was the last movie she ever made. She was only 16, but by the age of 16, she had already made 40 films.
Oh my God.
Incredible. Incredible.
I think she died at 41. She died very young.
Very young. Yeah. My
Arthur,
goodness, we
something to say. Arthur, you have something to
Yeah.
say?
Two quick comments. One on the direction. If you're going to do farce, French farce, with 3 doors, actually 4 doors, because you enter and a window. So you have 5, one short of true French farce. You're going to have to show all of it together. You can't do the cuts, then it won't be fun. So you have to do it the way it's done on stage. I thought that was done superbly. And the other is I want to give Tommy Dix a recognition for when I read his bio. He was one of the very few in Hollywood who had long-term, open, same-sex relationship through his life.
Oh, really? Really?
Yes, and
Okay.
who stayed in the system. Margaret Lindsay was one, Raymond Burr was one, and Tommy Dix. And I think that's wonderful. And I think he should get recognition for that.
And while we're talking about Tommy Dix, and we need to move on to the miscellany part pretty soon here, but you know, everybody knows this movie is funny, but critics also say that it is sweet, which they mean is a real compliment. What do you think it is about this movie that makes it sweet in addition to being funny?
Nobody's really evil, for one thing. I mean, there's no real bad person in the whole film. Everybody's just being nice, pretty much. You know, they were just playing a little joke with the Lucy thing, but everybody was nice, right? I mean, the newspaper guy was nice. I mean, the agent was nice. Everybody was doing nice things, and I guess that would make a sweet movie. When you have all nice characters, that's part of it, I think.
You know, I may have made a mistake here, and I'm reading Deborah Matthews in the chat. So I may have made a mistake. That may well be Tommy Dix in all of Buckle Down Winsaki at the end. I think what throws me about it is, one of you pointed out, it's a really bad lip syncing job, just in filmic terms. But I believe I stand corrected, and I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that, Tommy. At age 98, I should not have done that to you. Can we just say that Stanley Donen does figure into this movie as an up-and-comer? He was in the chorus of Pal Joey when Gene Kelly was doing it on Broadway. Gene Kelly spotted his talent, and when Gene was suggested by Hugh Martin to be the choreographer of Best Foot Forward on Broadway, Gene took Stanley Donen with him as assistant choreographer, and he was a chorus boy. And then Stanley Donen went into the movie and is a chorus boy in the movie as well. He really sticks out because he's the chorus boy who has this incredibly curly hair. If you go back to the movie, he will stand out for you. We're going to move on to the miscellany because it's 8 o'clock and there's some cool miscellany. We have 5 items for you, and this was a good discussion, you guys. Thank you. So much fun. Bob, the big announcement, the next.
Yes,
movie.
on May 6th, which is 3 weeks from today at 7 o'clock, everybody will have the opportunity to discuss Hans Christian Andersen, the 1952 movie starring Danny Kaye. Frank Lesser wrote the score, and Moss Hart wrote the script. So and I think Samuel Goldwyn produced it. It was a first-class group all the way. Classic film. It's been on TV 10 million times. And I think it's one of Danny Kaye's best. I think it is his best performance, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Certainly his most restrained.
Right.
That's for sure.
Because his wife had nothing to do with it, Bill. Unlike a lot of other movies.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it had a lot to do with it.
Miscellany number 2, it's in 2 parts. It's 2 commercials, but only one is self-serving. Several weeks ago, I told you that Coming Soon was a book titled The Stephen Sondheim Encyclopedia by Rick Pender. It was just published today. And this is what it looks like. It's 617 pages. It has hundreds of footnotes. It deals with all of Sondheim's 18 musicals, plus there are portraits of Bernadette Peters, Mandy Patinkin, Hal Prince, George Abbott. If you are a Sondheim fan, you must get this book. And to help persuade you to get it, it just so happens that on my show Saturday on Sirius at 3 p.m., I'm going to be interviewing Rick Pender, and it'll be the first of a 4-part miniseries, 4 hours dealing with this book and playing 42 Sondheim songs along the way. So that's something to look forward to. The second part of the commercial is entirely self-serving. Now that you're all fans of Hugh Martin, who never became a household word, but wrote some of the most beautiful music for Broadway and Hollywood, you want this. Got to make sure that it's on, there it is, now you can see it. It's called Hidden Treasures, Hugh Martin, 1941 to 2010, which is when he died. And our organization produced this while Hugh was still alive. Hugh worked on it very closely with us at the age of 97 because he wanted to make sure that we were using what he thought was his best work. So all 29 songs are, in a sense, chosen by Hugh Martin. He wrote a lot of the liner notes. Stephen Sondheim wrote a liner note for this. Sheldon Harnick wrote a liner note for it. There's a booklet with a CD that numbers 80 pages. So get this. And you'll also be supporting TMTP along the way. Because we love you guys so much, we're going to sell this CD to you for $10. $10. How about that? And all you have to do, thanks to Debbie Schinker, is you'll be receiving an email next week about this, and there will be a passcode in it. Use the passcode and you can claim the $10 price, okay?
And that code will be good till the end of April.
Great, good.
And if you already have it, you can give it as gifts to other people.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's right. At that price, you could do your whole Christmas list, your whole Christmas holiday list with Hugh Martin's Hidden Treasures. You're not going to know most of the songs, but they are fine songs, and that's the fun of it, okay? As usual, here comes my favorite slide, miscellany number 4. By now, you've memorized this. If you enjoyed the session, if you enjoyed the intro that we produced on Best Foot Forward, please consider making a donation to the Musical Theater Project in any amount that is meaningful to you. For the last piece of miscellany, I usually quote a lyric, but this time it's going to be a little more special. I mentioned in the intro, as you know, that I was working with Nancy on her memoirs when she developed cancer and she could not write anymore. It would have been a great book because she was such a thinker, as Arthur has already pointed out, along with several others of you. And the way we worked was kind of fun. I'll just tell you that. And then I'm going to quote from it. The way we worked was I would send her a list of questions, and her secretary would type up the answers and mail them back to me saying, Rudman answer 8, Rudman answer 14. And that's how we were doing this, going back and forth. So I thought maybe you'd get a kick out of hearing a few passages from this. Nobody, to my knowledge, other than David Craig, her husband, has ever seen this. So I'll quote a few passages for you. She grew up in a vaudeville family. So she was another one who was born in a trunk and toured as just a little kid. And here's one of the things she says. Thanks to vaudeville, it never occurred to me that there was any other way to live. I still don't feel there is a better way. I had no choice but to absorb what was going on around me because that was where I lived. My mother got me into the fresh air as much as she could, but she too adored the theater, the people in it, and the risks taken every performance by the performers. Performing is nothing but risks. That is part of its charm and attraction, whether we like to admit it or not. What I saw was the timing of a vaudevillian like the elegant Frank Fay, in white tie and tails, delivering his monologue, the same monologue told differently for every audience, as their mood indicated their willingness to be entertained. This is not the same as pandering to an audience. Pandering will lead you a merry chase, and you will end up not knowing who you are or where you are. Isn't that great? And why don't I do one more passage for you? This is about backstage. The backstage of a theater is ropes, lights, and the smell of anxiety and hope. It's all there if you listen. The best time to be in a theater is when everyone is gone and you have the place to yourself, and with the one work light, the single bulb, as I have said before, was there to keep anyone from being injured. But I prefer to think of it as a light for all the actors who have ever played in that theater. If you listen hard enough, if you look carefully enough, the theater will become brighter and more corners will reveal themselves than you ever dreamed were there. And then the sounds. I swear to you, I have heard actors whispering their lines from bygone plays. Don't take that away from me. It's really the only magic left. Brava, Nancy Walker. And thank you all for joining us again. We're going to move on to the diehards and see what they have to say. And Bob, what do you, and Debbie, what do you guys have to say as we
Just thank you very much. This was quite lively again, like it's been every 3 weeks or whatever. So please keep coming.
Keep coming. Debbie?
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Diehards in just about 10 seconds. Bye-bye.